Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about spaced learning over time, an instructional technique that teachers can use to help kids learn important math concepts. Before I get into this information, I want to remind everyone that the PowerPoint slides that I'm using and you're looking at are available on the Georgia Department of Education website you can download. Now, before I get into spaced learning over time, remember we're sort of tying everything into what the National Mathematics Advisory Panel final report recommended, which was kids with learning disabilities, those struggling, and low achievers need access to explicit and systematic instruction, at least on a regular basis. And one of those components of explicit instruction are weekly and monthly reviews. And within these weekly and monthly reviews, what this does is it promotes transfer of learning by students on important mathematical concepts that are needed in the future. Well, one technique which can be used during these weekly and monthly reviews is spaced learning over time. And this is something that I want to talk a little bit about over the next few minutes. But with spaced learning over time, really what this amounts to is revisiting information, concept, skills that were previously taught and learned to help them stay fresh and maintained in our students' repertoire. And a good example of this is calculus. Even though I have a math degree and I've spent a lot of time using calculus, if someone were to give me a calculus problem right now, there's three things that I could guarantee. Number one, I wouldn't be able to do it right now. Number two, someone had taught me how to do it at one point and there was a time that I could do it. So in order for me to relearn it or reawaken that information, I would have to practice it, revisit it, take a look at it. And that's exactly the aim of spaced learning over time. Now, one aspect that I'm sort of adding into this idea of spaced learning over time is the idea of providing some spaced instructional review as well, especially with kids with learning disabilities. What we find is they have issues with memory. And this is usually highlighted when a teacher says to the students, "Remember when we learned this last week?" And the kids sort of look at us like we have no idea what we're talking about. So with this spaced learning over time, it's very simple. Again, this is something that maybe a department or a grade level group of teachers can begin to look at and sort of spread out over the course of time. But with this principle, basically what is intended to do to review important concepts. Now that's the important aspect with this, is you can't review everything all the time. And with this spaced learning over time, very important concepts and procedures are identified, and then there's a plan put in place to review these at spaced intervals. It's better if it's 3 to 4 weeks, even spaced across several months will also be better as well. Now, where this sort of impacts on the teacher level, oftentimes math teachers will teach a unit. Towards the end of that unit, to help the kids better prepare for a test, they review the information that they just taught right before the test. And the purpose of that is to refresh and prepare the kids for that particular test. But with this spaced learning over time technique, what you're looking to review are things that were taught several months back. And what is important with this is this will allow the students to keep it fresh in their mind and basically maintain that particular skill or concept that we need them to maintain. Now, how does this look? Well, basically, what you would do is you'd sit down and you would take a look at the Georgia standards in this case, and you'd look at what you must cover across the course of the year. Now, all standards are obviously important. However, it's going to take the content knowledge and expertise of the teacher to sort of realize that certain concepts and procedures highlighted in standards are more important than others. And these are the ones that we want to focus in this spaced learning over time. Now, for example, one way to determine what concepts you might want to revisit is to take a look at what is difficult for students. And as the National Mathematics Advisory Panel report said, fractions is one of our weakest areas here in the country. So one of the things you might want to target is fractions. And what this entails is revisiting it with some instruction as well as some very structured practice. Now, word of caution here is some concepts, procedures are automatically reviewed. And those ideas we wouldn't want to sort of address specifically in this spaced learning over time. Now, as you can see right here, it seems what I would recommend is take a look at what your big ideas are and that you sort of block out your year in 3 to 4 week blocks. And within these 3 to 4 week blocks, begin to think of concepts and skills and areas that you have taught that kids struggle with. This is also the opportunity to go back and teach possibly concepts or skills or standards that are not necessarily grade level for these particular kids. And what you're going to do is you're going to revisit them. There's no hard and fast rule about how much time is spent revisiting them, but it's best if it's separated and you provide some instructional review, examples, model, and so forth. Now, with this spaced or this delayed instructional review, there's a lot of different things that occur in the classroom that you could draw on. You have your in-class reviews. We already know that's very important to help fill in prior knowledge and prep kids in prerequisite skills. Homework assignments are a good way to review. I recommend that if you're going to put homework problems from several months back on homework, that you make sure to identify to the kids where this is coming from so that they at least have a reference point. Cumulative midterm and final examinations are also good because, again, that's building in the practice that information that they've learned from beginning of the year, middle, is still very important. Now, there's other ways you can do this. I've just given a couple examples here. You have instructional review games. There's a lot of computer software out there that's good at skill practice, and actually the National Mathematics Advisory Panel said computer software is shown to be semi-positive, although we need more research in that area. Tutors or mini lessons. This is where you teachers can get into the idea of differentiating instruction. Maybe not everybody needs to review certain important concepts, but a few or small groups, then they can be given a mini lesson. Now, what I want to add here is the idea that during this spaced learning over time, that is important at some time to provide instruction. And this should not be occurring on a worksheet with 20 or 25 problems. It is okay to use worksheets at various stages, but it should be very focused as to what you're going to do with those worksheets and have a purpose. But you also need to provide instruction. If kids are having problems and they haven't learned it, practicing isn't necessarily going to teach them. It's that instruction paired with practice that will get them to the point where we need them to be, which is proficient. Now, homework. Again, we've talked about homework, and this is another area that we can use to review things, as well as cumulative and midterm exams. Now, we have to be careful with our homework that we don't have students, we're not requiring students to do too many problems, because if they become a little sort of overwhelmed, they end up not doing the homework. But these are all areas that you can sort of focus in and review important concepts from previous times in the semester. So sort of in summary, with this spaced learning over time, what you want to do is sort of block out your year in time frames of 3 to 4 weeks or a month or two, and begin to identify critical, essential, very important big ideas that you then will revisit with some instruction, some structured practice with feedback, and if necessary, reteach that skill or concept altogether. But with spaced learning over time, again, this is a teacher tool to plan and then move forward. And again, just to close with this, the slides that I used here today, you can download them and use them as you watch this video.